Warning, the following video may contain sequences which some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
There isn't much that can separate a child from a parent's love. In most cases, parents would do anything to protect their child from harm, and in turn, the child would appreciate their parents greatly, especially when they grow older. When children become adults, they usually recognize and appreciate their parents a lot more for the sacrifices they made when they were growing up. Possibly because now maybe the once child now has children of his or her own, and they're drawing from their own childhood experiences with their parents for guidance. This situation happens even more so with adoptive parents. Children who grow up adopted often love the ones who took care of them immensely. They realize that their adoptive mother and father treated them as their own, even though they do not share the same blood. In many cases, the bond between adoptive parents and child are even greater than that of children who grew up with their biological parents. This is especially prevalent with orphans who were adopted. There's just something about someone seeing you and deciding to love and cherish you as their own that leaves a lasting impression on a child. Often they just feel compelled to give back when they get older in some way, shape, or form. But of course, as with everything else in this world, exceptions to this exist. One such exception is with our case today. Lionel Justin Gore, a 34-year-old man from Ohio. Lionel did not appreciate his adoptive mother, Diane Gore. In fact, his last name suits him, as what he did to her was very sick, twisted, and awful. Moreover, his reasoning behind his actions were even more shocking, sharing a lot of sentiments with another killer we covered some time back, Jason Allen Thornburg. Our case today starts in New Matamoros, Ohio, in the home of Diane Gore. That evening there were 3 people within the home: Diane, Lionel, and Diane's grandson, who was also Lionel's nephew. He happened to be spending the night at his grandmother's house. However, that is a decision that would lead to a scene he could never unsee. At this time, we do not have all the details about what led up to the attack, but Diane's grandson retold everything as he saw it. Yes, you heard right. A 6-year-old witnessed this murder. The boy walked into his grandmother's room, perhaps after hearing a commotion from another part of the house. When he walked in, he was greeted by the sight of Lionel atop his grandmother, with a knife, cutting her head off. The child was obviously in shock. There was blood everywhere, and the person that the blood belonged to was his beloved grandmother. And the one spilling her blood was none other than his uncle. The child stated that Lionel started with a smaller knife, but then he stopped, proceeded to get a larger knife, then continued. He decapitated her, right in front of him. Then he, Lionel that is, placed her severed head next to her torso. After which, he set the house on fire, leaving the boy inside with the dead, decapitated body of his grandmother. Smoke from the flames started surrounding him. He was obviously still in complete shock over what he just witnessed. That scene would be mentally scarring for any adult, so one could only imagine the effect it had on the 6-year-old child. And after one traumatic experience, he was so quickly tossed into another, a house fire, something that again is mentally scarring. However, thankfully, he did not freeze up. Even at that age, he understood the situation and knew he had to get out somehow. The child navigated to a point within the blaze where he could crawl out of the house, and that is exactly what he did. But where was Lionel? Well, after he left the boy to fend for himself within the house fire, he stormed out of the house and headed straight for his mother's vehicle. As one could imagine, he was absolutely drenched in his mother's blood. While making his way to the vehicle, however, he ended up meeting Diane's sister, Stephanie Williams, who came to visit, only to find the house completely engulfed in flames. She saw Lionel, but before she could get any sort of explanation out of him, he threatened her, saying, "Get out of my way, or I'll kill you next." He then got into the vehicle and fled. Stephanie tried to enter the house to find her sister, but she was unable to. The flames were already too large. All she could do is just stare helplessly at the scene in despair. 911 was called, and they promptly made their way to the house where they met with Stephanie on the outside, and she told them everything she saw. The search for Lionel began, and thankfully he did not get far. They spotted the vehicle in West Virginia, and Lionel, realizing that the police were there for him, initiated a high-speed chase. During this chase, he ended up hitting 2 different officer vehicles before eventually crashing. He was taken to the hospital, and while being treated, investigators questioned him, where he admitted to killing Diane. But the question we all have is why? Why would he do this? What did Diane do that was so bad that he felt that he just had to kill her? His answer was simple. He plainly stated that the Holy Spirit told him to do it. Continues and further stated that the Holy Spirit told him that she was the devil, and for this reason he killed her. This murder has similarities to the murders of another killer we covered some time ago, Jason Allen Thornburg. With Jason, he stated that God was telling him to perform sacrifices. However, with Lionel, he stated the Holy Spirit told him that his adoptive mother, Lionel Gore, was the devil. But let's stop and think for a second, because we know the explanation he gave, but is that explanation the truth? I mean, obviously the Holy Spirit did not speak to this man and tell him to murder anyone, but what I'm saying is, the explanation he gave, is that really why he killed her? Let me explain. Let's look at the manner in which he killed Diane. Did the way in which he killed Diane seem like it was something he did out of devotion or reverence to you? Or did it seem like he killed her out of hate or anger or malice? He didn't just stab her and get it over with, he sat down and decapitated her. He had no concerns of his nephew, who is in the room watching the horror unfold. He was hell-bent on taking her head off her body. You don't do something like that out of godly devotion. It takes a special kind of individual to be able to do something like that. Someone who loved their mother would never be able to do what he did. And then there's what he said to his Aunt Stephanie. "Get out of my way, or I'll kill you next." If the one who told you to do this was the Holy Spirit, why did he threaten to kill Stephanie as well? Did the Holy Spirit tell him to kill her too? All these questions, I would say, proves one of 2 things. Either Lionel committed this murder with hate and malice in his heart, or he is a deeply disturbed individual. But really, if you think about it, there's always the chance that it's both, because even if you did kill her out of hate, decapitating someone is something that not even some of the worst killers in prisons can do. It honestly would take a special kind of malicious individual to do something like that. The type of person that Lionel Gore is. All the charges against him are yet to be said, but off the information given alone, we could anticipate him being charged with first-degree murder, child endangerment, arson, and resisting arrest. I say first-degree murder because a killing like this is clearly premeditated. He didn't just think about this on the spot. He decapitated her and set the house on fire. There was some sort of planning that went into this. At no point did any of the witnesses state that Lionel was panicking. It was like he had his entire plan figured out. He killed Diane, decapitated her, tried to conceal the murder through arson, then made his getaway in her vehicle. That seems planned, and more than likely it was planned. In any case, Lionel is probably looking at life in prison for a crime like this. And if he does get that sentence, it would be fully deserved. All in all, this case was absolutely horrific. Not just because Lionel killed and decapitated his adoptive mother, but because he did it in front of a child. Then he proceeded to put said child in a situation where he could have lost his life. What that child saw is something that he could never unsee. What he went through that evening is something that cannot be reversed. True, he is young, but I think we could all agree that seeing something like that is something that would not be easily forgotten. It's a scar on his mind that may never ever heal. Also, Diane, this is the person that she raised. Lionel was not her son by blood, but she treated him as her own, and for him to turn his back on her like that, to betray her like that, it's just an absolutely horrible way to go. My heart goes out to the family, and hopefully justice will be served in full to Lionel Gore. It does not seem likely that this man was Bible fanatic like Jason Allen Thornburg, though he claims to have done this because of the Holy Spirit, but what I will say is lunatics exist everywhere. Which is why we need to be very careful. Sometimes, even with our own family, we aren't safe. This was the case with Diane Gore, and I certainly hope that this isn't the case for you.